morning, another prairie segment. We'll look at pretty yellow flowers, which we have abundantly on the prairie. And here I'm standing right next to a patch of rosinweed. It's in one of the many sunflowers. This one is what's called the Silphium genus, and there are a couple of others that have slightly larger flowers, and they tend to be much taller. They have huge leaves, and here's one of those, and this one is called Prairie Dock. It's a beautiful foliage plant, and then when it does send up a flower stalk, it may be 6 to 12 feet tall with lots of yellow daisies on it. It's actually quite spectacular. And then somewhere out here, I think I saw compass plant. Well, compass plant is another one of the Silphium. Gotta find it. Here it is. And compass plant got its name because the leaves will very often, not always, they will align with the sun. And it's said that out on the prairies, 200 years ago when there were no trails, there was a cloudy, overcast day, and in order to know which direction you were going, because they didn't have compasses, they would look at compass plant and would give them an idea where the sun was. So I think that's kind of interesting. But again, back to the yellow flowers, there'll be many more coming. This is one of our goldenrods, rigid goldenrod. It will have a yellow flower. They're very attractive, by the way. And here's a big patch of true sunflowers. This one is soft sunflower. And it too has the typical yellow daisy-topped flower. It's called Helianthus. And of course, Helios is the sun. And so it's a very appropriate name, Helianthus. But not everything yellow as a sunflower is Helianthus, as we've already seen. One very pretty plant out here, and we have lots of them, maybe not just right here, is black-eyed Susan. There's brown-eyed Susan, there's black-eyed Susan, there's several. This one is an annual. It's widely used in horticulture with many varieties that have larger flowers, have red in the flower, and you see them everywhere in the spring in the garden centers. So this is Rudbeckia. This is Rudbeckia hirta, and hairy, a little sticky, very common. Another one that's used in horticulture quite a bit, although we don't realize it. This one is not fully developed. It may have been because of the very dry weather we have. I don't know. But this is called false sunflower. It has nice, full yellow flowers. And I don't know why anybody would call it false sunflower, but a lot of plants out here that are called false whatever, and there's nothing false about them. What's nice about this, I call them Heliopsis. And again, you see the name Helios in the botanical name. So this is false sunflower Heliopsis. The interesting thing is, I was familiar with it already 60 years ago, long before I came to these shores in my native Germany. And it was a garden plant. And just like black-eyed Susan, the Heliopsis false sunflower, the Heleniums, of which we do have one of two species here. In wet spots, the Helenium flexibosum is also blooming now. I wish I had a flower here for it. Very distinctive and very much used in Europe in horticulture. Matter of fact, the English have developed a whole bunch of hybrids, or Moorheim hybrids, used in horticulture. And again, it's good to remember when people say, well, what's it good for? Everything is good for something. But many of these have entered horticulture in a big way, and it's something that some of us are fascinated by. That's Heliopsis sunflower, or if you want, a false sunflower, but I don't think it's false. Another very common prairie plant for us is gray-headed coneflower. And if you see, indeed, it's sort of gray-headed and turns more gray later on. The flowers kind of flare out, and it gives it a very distinctive look, especially in a prairie breeze, as they move with a prairie breeze. It's a very elegant, subdued flower, and again, one of our many, many yellow sunflowers. But some bloom early, some bloom later, and here again you got rosinweed, which makes a very, very spectacular display, and a lot of it is still in bud, so it'll be blooming for the next month or so. And that's nice about so many of the sunflowers. In the heat of the summer, and we do have heat and humidity on the prairie, they have a very long season in the sun. Sunflowers. What else is there in the way of sunflowers? Well, not quite blooming yet. This is going to be a particularly spectacular one. This is called the sweet coneflower. It's also a relative of the annual Rudbeckia hirta, the black-eyed Susan. It's a Rudbeckia, and again, the Rudbeckias, and there are many species, are very much used in horticulture, and of course we cherish them for their performance, and in our prairie restoration we like to get it seeded in. Interesting about this plant is, and I cannot share that with you because you can't see fragrance. The leaves, the stems, if you crush them, have a vanilla-like fragrance to them. Again, some of the many, many subtle things that the prairie plants have to offer, and if you go to horticulture, they maintain some of that character. So it's wonderful to do an early morning in the prairies and just see, even if it's just a repetition on the theme, like here the black-eyed Susan again. Nobody planted them. The Lord planted those, the annuals, so they come up, especially after fire management. They're particularly abundant. Here we see a lot of greenery, things to come. The helenium, the sneezeweed. By the way, the heleniums are called sneezeweeds. And not a particularly attractive name for an attractive flower, but that's the name, sneezeweed. And there's an annual that I believe the Indians actually use to powder it and snuff it and that make them sneeze. So it's called sneezeweed. Helenium genus, again, Helios, the sun, you know, origin of botanical names are interesting. And the other thing I find intriguing, back in the old country, we call it Sonnenbraut, which means bride of the sun, because they like the sun. They bloom in the summertime. So it's a play on the Latin, on the scientific name, and so it's helenium, and most of them are listed just as helenium if you look in the catalog, and unfortunately we don't have one here, but